Tuning in to the Figure It Out podcast.
Figure It Out podcast,
where we figure everything out from business, social media, marketing, and more. Because we are always living that marketing life.
Living that marketing life.
On this podcast, we fuel marketing through education, inspiration, and motivation.
Fuel marketing through education, inspiration, and motivation.
I am your host, Frank Yenzi. The Figure It Out podcast is expanding the team by adding the occasional co-host. His experiences and stories are inspirational and motivational. He's obtained his Social Service Worker Diploma from Algonquin College. Then he got his Bachelor Social Work degree from Carleton University. And now he is finishing up his Master's of Social Work from Carleton University. He is involved with the Drop-In Center for Youth. He also works on a crisis line for youth and family. He enjoys working with people because as a young person he appreciated the support from the people close to him, so he wants to pay it forward to help others meet their goals. When he's not working, he's hitting the fairways and is a FIFA semi-pro. Here he is figuring it out with Frank. Figure It Out podcast, Carl Radford.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So for those, Carl and I go way back, and we've seen each other grow from high school kids to what we are now. So Carl, your social service work, like what's going on with that now, and how has it changed over the years, and what got you involved? Like, give us a snip of that.
I've always kind of been interested in social work. Both my parents are retired social workers. Well, my father obviously passed away when I was younger, but no, he was involved in social work, and my mom was a social worker for many years. So I think I was kind of raised with the values of compassion and caring about others, and so it was kind of like a natural choice. And I think around the age of like 22 or 23, I decided that I kind of wanted to get into social work. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. I was out of high school and just working in restaurants, and I kind of wanted to give back to the community, and I kind of wanted to be able to help people that were struggling. So I decided to apply to Algonquin College in their social service worker program, and I got into that. And then from there, I was able to apply to Carleton's Bachelor social work program, and I got into that. So basically the way it works is like I did 2 years at Algonquin, and then they kind of have an accreditation agreement with Carleton where 2 years at Algonquin counts for 1 year at Carleton. So I went into Carleton's Bachelor social work program in my, I think, with second year standing, and then took a bunch of summer courses to speed the process up and finished in about 2.5 years. And now I am finished the coursework for my master's. I'm just waiting to complete the placement or the practicum portion of my master's of social work degree, also from Carleton University.
Can you get more in depth with like the journeys from like start to now? So like what you didn't know and what you eventually learned and what you saw on the way, in more specifics?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the best things that people can do if they're interested in getting involved in social work is to volunteer. One, it's a great way to establish connections within the community and to network, because certainly if you do volunteer work for an organization and they like you, they might be more inclined to hire you in the future if you have the right qualifications for the position, because they know who you are, they've seen the work that you've done, they see the work that you do with people. Secondly, volunteering also gives you a sense of what kind of population you want to work with, because obviously social work is a super, super broad field, and you can work with youth, you can work with children, you can work with families, you can work with seniors, you can work with newcomers, you can work with people with mental health issues, addictions issues. A lot of times you work in areas where a lot of those different populations would intersect with each other. So yeah, I mean, that's essentially how I got in, because I remember to apply to Algonquin, you actually had to do some volunteer experience first before, like that was part of the qualifications you needed for the program. So my upstairs neighbor at the time was actually working at a long-term care home. So I asked her if she'd be willing to take me on as a volunteer. She accepted. I think I probably volunteered for like a month and a half there. I think 2 or 3 days a week, got the hours that I needed. That was more than enough to make the volunteer hours requirement to get into Algonquin. And it was interesting too, because it gave me kind of a sense of some of the work that I might be doing in the future. It also gave me a sense of what it was like to work with the seniors population. And it was just an interesting experience because I'd never really worked with seniors before. So that was kind of like my intro. And then through Algonquin, we had 2 field placements. So the first one I did was at the Glebe Center, so a seniors residence, like a long-term care home. And that was actually quite interesting. I was working with Alzheimer's patients, and that was a really interesting experience. I learned a lot about various stages of Alzheimer's, learned a lot about about some of the recreational activities they can do. And I learned a lot about just the disease itself and people's different level of functioning when they have Alzheimer's. Because I think one of the kind of myths about Alzheimer's is that people that have it are just delusional and crazy and are never really coherent and involved in reality. But when you work with them firsthand, you get to see that, depending on how far the disease has progressed, they can be very, very with it and very aware of their surroundings. I mean, their memories is not going to be good and things get jumbled together, but you could have a conversation with them and you wouldn't necessarily know that they were struggling at all, depending on what kind of day they were having. So that was really interesting. And then the second placement that I think had the biggest impact on me, because it was with youth, and I now currently work with youth in my paid position, was at Holy Trinity Catholic High School in Canada. And so I was there for a full year, and I was doing everything from helping out in classrooms where there were behavioral issues. I was mentoring some kids who had a couple of struggles and were a little bit developmentally delayed. I helped run a program that paired some of the grade 7 and 8 students in the school with grade 10, 11, and 12 students, and then kind of oversaw that as it ran. And so, I mean, as things changed and progressed throughout the year, they had me go into different locations, but it was a really interesting opportunity, and it really got me engaged, I think, in working with youth, because I find that, and not to say there's anything wrong with working with adults, but I find youth are a little bit more impressionable, and they can, they tend to listen a little bit more. They're not so set in their ways. And so there's always a potential for someone to change, but I find just with the adult population, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. But with youth, I don't know, because I'm a little bit on the younger side too, if it's easier for me to engage with them, but that's kind of how I found what I really enjoy doing, which I do to this day.
So you went from volunteering with the seniors and now you're in the youth. Has there ever been a time where you made it, like you were like, okay, I actually made a difference? There's a sign of change in someone or a situation, something that stands out where you're like, this is why I decided to go down this path to help people. And this, even though it's just one person right now, that makes you like, gives you that pride, like that joy, like, okay, I'm doing it. This is what it should be about, helping those. Is there any story that stands out from all the cases that you've been involved with?
It's weird because I think when I got into the field, I was expecting to make these like huge waves of change and, like just totally revamp the system that people live in. And that those are really good ideals to have. But when you actually hit the so-called real world, you realize that, there are a lot of systems and institutions in place that unfortunately prevent people from making these drastic sweeping changes in their lives. But I think, certainly where I work now at the drop-in center, you see a lot of youth that are street involved and are almost in kind of a survival mode. So some of the small little successes that they have are huge for me. There's a lot of people sometimes that are using, I think the people that are using, opiate drugs and other substances like that. And if they're able to maintain some sort of sobriety, or they're able to secure housing, like those kind of things wouldn't necessarily, for some people, they don't think twice about it. It's like, oh yeah, I rent my apartment, money's never an issue for them. But, if you're struggling to make ends meet, you're living on social assistance, you may have addictions or mental health issues, having a place to stay is a huge, huge, huge deal. So I think those are the times, that I feel really good is when I'm able to help someone. But, I think also what I like is being able to empower people to kind of change themselves. Because I think it's one thing for me to, do something for someone. And I think to a certain extent, when you begin working with somebody, or depending on where they're at in terms of wanting to change things or wanting to help themselves, you may have to take a more active role as the person working with them. But, as you continue to work with them and you see them evolve and progress, and you kind of, you help them so that they get to a point where they don't really need you. They might need to talk with you once in a while to bounce some ideas off of you, but they have the resources, they have the knowledge. They know what to do. And when you see people get to that point, it's a really good feeling.
What were some of the biggest struggles you've had? Like you're still kind of not new, but you're still there's probably a lot that you can learn or experience. What are some of the struggles that you deal with, and how do you deal with them?
Well, I mean, sometimes it's eventual that you're going to work with somebody that either you don't like or they're not going to like you. And I don't think it's necessarily about winning everybody over to my side. Like I realized a long time ago that not every client I work with is going to like me, nor do they have to like me. I think at the bottom line, if I'm able to help them in some way, shape, or form, that's really all that matters. Sometimes, it can be challenging, especially when you're working with with a homeless youth population, to see them kind of go up against the system time and time again and just really struggle to have their needs met. I mean, you look at Ontario Works or something like that, where people are only, as a single person, you might be entitled to $740 a month, and if someone's trying to get housing with $740 a month, especially in the city of Ottawa, you're not going to be able to find anything really. Like, you might be able to find a room in someone's house, but even then that comes with its own host of issues. So sometimes, just trying to help youth navigate the system, and when they're kind of running up against a lot of barriers and you're trying to help them overcome those barriers, but I mean, they're just larger systems at play that really make that challenging. It can be a struggle. And just seeing people struggle, in general, when you see somebody and they are, they're really struggling with addictions issues, or they're really struggling with mental health issues, they don't have a lot of support. Their family's just not involved. They don't have a lot of friends. It can be challenging because, you care about people, and you want to see them succeed, and you want to see them do their best. And there's kind of that idea that as a social worker, you kind of maintain these professional boundaries, which is key. Like, you need to do that, one, for the professionalism itself, but then two, for your own sanity. But I would argue that it's impossible as a social worker not to get attached to the people you're working with in one way, shape, or form. And so to see them struggle as a human being, that hurts.
So how do you balance like the struggles and like the toughness at work, and then when you get home, like, does it stick to you? Does it bother you? Do you have a way to balance it? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, I think self-care is really important. That's definitely a huge part of it. Having hobbies outside of work that completely take my mind away from social work. So for me, sports is a really big part of that. I mean, watching sports for one is huge, but playing sports. So, before COVID started, I was playing soccer 2 days a week. In the summers, I'd usually play soccer 2 or 3 days a week, and play softball as well. I play a lot of board games with my friends, as you know. Just hanging out with my partner, being able to talk to her about what's happened, being able to talk to my colleagues at work sometimes if I'm struggling. Like, I think that's one of the big components for self-care for me is talking about how I'm feeling and not just balling it up inside. I mean, it's one thing when you're working, you have to kind of compartmentalize a lot. So if you see someone and they're obviously in crisis or they're really struggling, you just have to kind of put your shock aside and help them with what they need at the moment. And afterwards, you kind of debrief with your supervisor or with one of your colleagues, or, if I get home and I need to talk to my partner about it. So I find those kind of things very helpful. And yeah, self-care is huge. And also just kind of knowing where my own boundaries lie. One of the things that I did a training a couple of years ago on motivational interviewing, and one of the phrases that really stuck with me is like, you can own the process, but the outcome is up to the client. And I mean, in the sense of like, as the worker, I can do my best to get them connected with the services that they need, help them navigate challenging systems, help them ensure they have their basic needs met, and then, kind of point them in the direction and have some conversations about barriers they might be facing in their own life and ways that they can work on eliminating those barriers. But ultimately, it's not my decision to make what they do with their life, nor is it my life to live for them. So I think, being able to maintain that boundary for myself and realizing that, yeah, I own the process and I own giving them the best I can in terms of trying to get them connected with the services that they need and helping them work through crises and helping them resolve conflicts. But ultimately, they're the ones living their lives, and they make the decisions in regards to what they're going to do.
So you said that you would talk to people within your company that you work with, and you would ask them for guidance or suggestions, where you discuss whatever you need to discuss. How important is it that you each make each other better, and then eventually it trickles down to the people that you work for or work with to make them better, and then hopefully they'll make other people better? So how important is making each other better that eventually everyone gets better?
It's weird. Like when I talk to colleagues, like some of it is just venting. Like, I got to get things off of my chest. And because we're working with the same people, they'll be like, oh yeah, like, I understand that can be really challenging. So there's definitely a usefulness to that. But then it's also just brainstorming ideas. Like, okay, so I'm dealing with this issue. I know that you've dealt with this issue with another client before, or, you've made this referral to this service before, or helped them fill out this form before. Can you show me how to do that? And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about, helping each other so that we can offer the best service possible. And like, certainly at the drop-in, we're a team. We want to make sure that, we're offering when we're working in a team, that we're offering them the best services that we can, and also that we're all kind of on the same page in terms of boundaries and rules and things like that. So it's always really good to talk to your team, and that's exactly it, because if we're all on the same page and we're all kind of working towards the same goals with our clients, then ultimately the service is at its best.
I don't think a lot of people think about, like, they hear social work, but they don't know like how in depth it gets with like the struggles that you have to deal with. You're trying to help, and I don't know, sometimes maybe they're not accepting the help, right? Like,
kind
of something you see in a movie.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too. Is, I mean, like, you can yell and scream and shout at someone to change until you're blue in the face, but ultimately, until they want to change or they want to accept the help, they're not going to. And that's kind of one of the lessons that you have to learn early on, which goes back to what I was saying before, is like, you own the process, not the outcome. All you can do is give it your best. All you can do is try and engage with them to the best of your ability. All you can do is try and refer them to services and try and counsel and help the best you can. Ultimately, it's up to them whether they choose to listen to what you have to say, whether they choose to accept the help you're offering. And so I think that was one of the things, as a social worker early on. And I mean, I've been working in the field now for about 5 or 6 years, so I've had a chance to kind of build my own style more and set some more concrete boundaries for myself. But yeah, because one of the things that could definitely happen in this field is that you burn out, because you just see so much suffering and you just see so much challenge. And it's like, if you just personalize that and you own all of that, it can easily overwhelm you. You have to kind of maintain boundaries for yourself in terms of what you're willing to do, what you're willing to help a client with, and where you're kind of willing to say, okay, I've done my part. Now it's kind of up to you to take the reins, because ultimately you're the one who needs to make these choices about yourself and your life moving forward.
What did you say? Own the process, not the result, not the outcome?
Yeah, so I own the process, not the outcome, in the sense that, when you're working with somebody, it's a collaborative process in my mind, where, you're helping them, like, they're the experts on their own lives inevitably. So if someone comes to me and they say that they have a problem, I'm asking them, what does that problem look like? What is that problem? How is that problem presenting itself? And how is it impacting different areas of your life? And then what would you like to work on? And I can suggest different things. I can say, well, have you thought about it this way? Or have you thought about trying this? But ultimately, they're the ones who decide whether or not they want to try something, whether or not they want to take whether or not they want to take the suggestions that I've given. I mean, one of the things that I heard, and this was back at Algonquin when I was doing the social service worker program, and I really tried to stick with, is like, as social workers, we're not in the business of giving advice. Mm-hmm. We offer suggestions and choices. Because I feel like I could give advice and I could say, I would do it this way.
Yeah.
But I'm not them. I'm not living their life.
True.
So, I can suggest, have you thought about doing this way? And if they say no, that's fine. Yeah. If they say yes, sure, let's go for it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, really, people are experts on themselves. And if they're going to make a change, I feel like the most lasting, impactful changes that they can make will be dictated and owned by them. I'm just kind of like a guide along the way, along the journey,
I think kind of stepping away from social work, but giving people advice and sharing what people, I hate when I'm talking to someone, I hate saying, you should do this, you should try that. I hate saying the word should,
Yeah, you don't want to shit all over somebody,
Yeah. So no, like, I learned that over, like, as I got older. It's like, and I tell people that, I was like, I hate saying this and I don't want to say it, but then I say it and it's like, I'm not down with this. Like, who are you? Like you said, you don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what their shoes are, what their day is like, what they have to go through. And it's like, you should try this, knowing that I have nothing from experience,
Yeah. And I mean, you'll probably find, as you probably experienced, like, you'll get a lot more people, or you'll win a lot more people over to your side by making suggestions than by just dictating what they should do. Because if you tell someone what to do, their natural instinct is usually to get defensive. Their natural instinct is usually to get a little bit defensive.
Okay, yeah.
And they kind of get like, oh, you're telling me what to do? Yeah. Like, whereas if you suggest something and you support them no matter what, tend to get a lot better outcomes that way.
Yeah, like, for me, like, I don't know if we talked about this before, but like, everyone's like, Frank, you should get into the trades. Frank, you should get into this and that. They make a lot of money. Oh, you should work at a hockey rink, like, as a Zamboni driver. They make good money. And it's like, then why don't you do it?
Yeah, and I mean, how do you feel when someone says you should do this, you should do that?
Yeah, I had a friend he kept asking me what's with the employment situation. What's the employment situation? I'm like, oh, it's not going as planned, but whatever. And then he's like, whoa, why don't you? Do you ever think about bringing it down a little? And I was like, what kind of friend would tell a friend to like, step down a little? Like, I don't know. It's just, to me, it was like that was kind of, that wasn't the support I was looking for,
No.
Like, you ever think of downgrading? And I was like, nah, like I'm good. Like I'm gonna keep fighting for what I want.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna downgrade because right now is like, obviously right now it's hard for everyone in different situations to move forward, but it's unless the selected few who can adapt to this situation, but some people just can't at all. And no, it's like, and yeah, giving suggestions and being supportive is the best way, because if I say you should do this and you don't do it and then you fail again, I'm gonna be like, told you so. It's not gonna help anyone get better.
No. Because ultimately people need to try things for themselves and experience things for themselves to figure out what does and doesn't work for them. I mean, a lot of times you'll hear like experience is the best teacher, and that's exactly it.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, and it can be applied to all aspects of life when you're just talking about working with somebody, because like, I guess especially in social work, like I'm a firm believer in working with somebody and meeting somebody where they're at and working with them to kind of come up with goals that they want.
What do you think is a big, like, I don't want to say the problem because that's such a big word. What do you think of some of the things that we can tweak to make like social, like it'd be like if there was no need for social work, you wouldn't have a job, but like, I think everyone would rather everyone be good and not have these problems. So like, what do you think that some of the things that we can do now, like with everything that we have in 2020, like without all the pandemic stuff and all the negative media? I mean, like, what are some of the things and steps people can do, not social workers or people who are on the outside?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
I find as a society generally, there's just kind of a lack of empathy, and I think that is kind of a result. I don't want to sound like a communist, but sometimes capitalism can pit people against each other to the point where someone's not interested in bringing everybody up. Someone only becomes interested in bringing themselves up, and oftentimes to bring themselves up, they have to put others down.
That's true.
And so if people have more empathy and they work towards collective goals, that can be really helpful. And part of that is in like a mindset, and part of that is in like actions. And the mindset is kind of having compassion and empathy and understanding for people that are less fortunate than you. And I mean, I think we've all been there when we see someone homeless on the street. Well, they're, a useless drug addict. They had all the opportunities in the world, but they just, somewhere along the line, they just stopped trying and just thought, I'm just going to get high instead. And it's like, no, I mean, I would argue that very few people grow up wanting to become homeless.
Yeah, for sure.
Or actively, want to have addictions issues or mental health issues. And oftentimes those two are so intertwined. So if you can be a little bit more compassionate, maybe you'd be more likely to say, I don't necessarily feel comfortable giving you money, but like, here's the sandwich I have. Mm-hmm. Or, turn around and donate to some of the homeless shelters. Try and get involved, try and volunteer doing street outreach, working, volunteering for an organization like the food bank. There are a lot of families, even within the city of Ottawa, that struggle to put food on the table for everyone. So, if people could be more empathetic and more compassionate towards others that are in need, that would help everybody out, because realistically, when you help everybody, everyone benefits from that.
Yeah, you're totally right.
In one way or another. So I think if people could just stop being so individualistic and look at more of the collective good. And I mean, at the end of the day, you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your loved ones. That is first and foremost, But if you find yourself getting to a point where you're like, yeah, I have this excess money, or I'm doing fairly well off, look at ways that you can help support others. Look at ways that you can help better your community. Look at ways that you can volunteer, that you can do some like community cleanups, things like that. Just and it doesn't have to be some huge initiative. Like, people always say, oh, I gotta think huge, but the reality is, if you just do some small little thing, you could be making a difference for even one person. And if you have,
oh, you're totally right.
Yeah.
It's because I'm big on empathy, and like, I think for me, I learned empathy from like listening. Actually listen to someone talk, not just not just waiting for your turn to talk. You know, it's okay, he's done talking now, I can say whatever I want, unrelated, not the same subject. And it, like I just asked you, like, what can we do in 2020 from all the things we have with technology and apps and, you know, this and that? You actually just bring up basic human, you know, care, emotions. Like we all have it, you know, it's not, it doesn't come down to technology. It doesn't come down to, you know, machinery or whatever. It's actually just like opening your heart, opening your mind, opening your ears, open your eyes.
Yeah.
And you can see that the little, like you said, compassion, empathy, like listen to what the people's problems are. And don't just be like, oh, that's your fault. Oh, you had your chance. You know, not everyone had the fair chance. And I'm not saying that like life shouldn't be about that, but more people can open their eyes and open, not like, doesn't have to open their wallets. You know what I mean? Like they can open, like just listen more.
Yeah, you don't even need to donate. You could just donate your time if you can.
Yeah.
Like you could just volunteer for organization, helping to like, you know, clean up a park, or, you know, helping to organize food at a food bank, or like just little things like that. And I think one of the ways technology can help with that is just by spreading awareness. And I mean, I think over the past couple of weeks, we've seen with everything that's been going on, just how important social media can be in terms of spreading awareness about different issues, spreading awareness even with in regards to COVID, you know, spreading updates, spreading awareness so that more people know what to look out for, so more people know how to keep themselves safe. I mean, technology can be used to connect people and really establish meaningful connection, especially in times like this when you can't always physically see people.
Kind of about social media. It's like when someone posts, I know I saw like comedy skits about this, but let's say I post, I'm doing a good deed, right? Like I'm posting that I did a good deed. And then people are like, you're just posting that just so people, you look good. And it's like, it's this gray area because like, I know a lot of people do good and don't post about it at all. And then I know some people who barely do any good and they post about it. And it's like, where's the fine line of like, I'm like you said, social media, you can spread awareness. You can, you know, you can show examples of giving back without your wallet. So what do you think is like, what's your take on when people post, when they do good deeds? Because if you really wanted to, you can do it every day, right?
Yeah.
So like,
it's interesting. It's interesting. Like, I'm trying to think because it is a kind of, because there are people like that who will just, you know, they'll post themselves doing a good deed and like that's all they're doing. They're just looking for praise. They're just looking for that. But I mean, it's tough because at the end of the day, they've still done a good act, even though they're still looking for that praise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's about finding the balance between that. But it's good to like, I think it's good to do things and not necessarily look for that praise and look for that validation. Yeah. A lot of people I find they seek validation from others, which I think is only human because we all want to be accepted. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected, and we all want to have friends that care about us and establish connections. But also too, it's a lot about just being comfortable with yourself and being happy with, you know, where you're at as a person. So, you know, you can do 1,000,001 charitable things and not post about any of it. You know that you've done a good deed, and it's not necessarily up to everyone else to validate that you've done this and everyone else to like your post or whatever. One thing I would say though is if you do post about those things, the one thing that it does bring is awareness to the cause. So like if I'm volunteering somewhere and I'm like, holy shit, like these people really need a lot of help, or this organization really needs a lot of help, it could be good to post about that because then that would get others interested. Oh my goodness, this organization needs this kind of help, or they're in need of volunteers for this event. And so that's where I think it can be really good. But I think it's about finding that fine line really and that balance. And I think that's something that only people can really know. Because it just gets so tough because if everybody's just calling each other out and everything, then people just don't want to post at all because for fear of, you know, retribution online. And I don't think that should happen either. I think it's kind of just a balance that has to be established.
Did you see that, like, I guess somewhere in America, they were fixing up like some of the damaged properties, and like this girl gets out of her car with her boyfriend and like she's like, can I borrow the drill for a picture? And she's pretending to drill like she's fixing, but she just took it for the gram. And then like people on the street saw her and were like, oh yeah, Instagram boyfriend over here. And then apparently they found out who she was and she actually got fired. She was, I think she was a journalist or something. But yeah, that's like, it's just sad how like, why don't you actually do a good deed for like 5-10 minutes, you know?
Yeah, no. And I mean, that's the thing. Like if you have time to go out and actively seek a place to pose for a photo doing something, why not just go out and do it? And so that's kind of like the downside of social media is that like you get these people that, they do it for the gram. They just kind of want the likes, they want the status, but there's not actually like a commitment behind that. And I think social media can be really good for starting movements and starting to initiate change, but ultimately, if all you're doing it for is for social media, you know what I mean? Like you're kind of missing the point.
Yeah.
Because I think social media can get something started, but then you need to move beyond social media into actual full-blown change. You know what I mean? Like you could start off by, yeah, I posted for a picture, nailing some framing a house, for instance, for like Habitat for Humanity or something. But the real change will come when you put your phone down and you keep on working on that house until it's done. And then you're like, oh, I really enjoyed this, or, I want to do this again, and start doing it again, encouraging others to get involved. But I mean, at the same time, I feel kind of sorry for that girl because, what she did was like, it was stupid. It wasn't, it was kind of thoughtless, and it was disingenuous. But I don't think she necessarily needs to get fired for that. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a fireable offense.
I think she got fired. I'm not sure, but I heard she did, but who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, it's tough because with social media too, I find sometimes there's like an anonymity that's created when people are like responding to comments or they're responding to videos and stuff, and they just kind of get this like keyboard warrior mentality to a certain extent where they just fire off whatever, and it can be really detrimental to people. So I think people have to kind of be cautious and aware and realize that, like, yes, just because you're posting this to an online forum, it doesn't mean that there aren't actual people that are connected to these posts.
Yeah, for sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, and I'm kind of worried, like going down the road, like not worried, but there's gonna be bumps, so many bumps with social media for good and bad. What do you think gets more clicks, the good headlines or negative headlines? Negative headlines.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Negativity sells, unfortunately.
Yeah. So kind of, we'll finish off with a couple of, what do you think you would tell your younger self from the beginning of getting to social work to now? And then what would you tell young people who are trying to get into helping people and social work and stuff like that?
So, I mean, in terms of what I would tell myself, I think I would tell myself to keep an open mind. I would remind myself about the importance of self-care, and that ultimately that life is about balance. Because I think when I first started off in the career, I was really gung-ho on working as much as I could, banking hours, obviously being compensated for it, but kind of establishing myself. But, sometimes that my working too much I wouldn't balance it enough with my sanity. And so I wasn't really taking care of myself enough to the point where not that I was coming close to burnout, but I was just tired easily. I'd be a little bit more irritable, reminding myself about self-care and reminding myself to stay balanced. And also reminding myself that, change and success is a very relative thing. Because I think when I first started in the field, I had all these huge aspirations. I was going to help people. I was going to change the system. I was really going to make a difference. And like, those are all really good things to have. Like, I would still tell myself, have those ideals. But what I would caution myself is to say, change and success are different things to different people. And success for one person might be purchasing a home. Success for another person might be actually renting a home or renting a bedroom or having a place to sleep at night, having some stability, having some security. Because I think, I can come in wanting the absolute best for my clients, but if they don't want that for themselves, if I'm trying to help them with what I think they need or what I think they want, that's not working with them where they're at. So I think that's what I would kind of remind my younger self, because I think in my earlier years, I was a little bit more kind of pushy with clients, and I kind of, not that I pushed my own agenda, but I kind of pushed them to do more.
Yeah.
And it's good to have that motivation, but ultimately you have to kind of find a balance between motivating someone and not just nagging them all the time.
It's true.
Especially with young people too, because I mean they get told what to do by adults and their parents all the time,
every day.
So if I'm just one more person telling them what to do, I'm not going to help them, and they're not going to want to work with me.
So what would go on?
Oh, it's just to answer your second question. What I would tell people that are interested in getting into the field now is volunteer. I would say that's a huge one. Look for volunteer opportunities. whether it's with large community organizations, whether it's with a demographic you might be really interested in working with later on. But it will give you a sense of kind of what you want, who you want to work with. And it's also a really good networking opportunity to start off with. And then the education piece, it's unfortunate that you need a bachelor's degree and a master's degree to do certain things, but to open as many doors for yourself as possible, I would encourage people to strive for that higher education so that they can do the work that they want to do.
Perfect. So what would be the one takeaway from everything for everyone? Whether it's empathy or helping out, volunteering, what would you say? Don't play with social media that much.
Empathy is the one that I would, because I think empathy encompasses everything. And if you have empathy and you're able to empathize with others, you're able to care about others and you're able to work with others and help other people. Because at the end of the day, helping others helps yourself.
It's true. Build a better team around you, and then everyone gets better, then you get better, then other people get better, and everything's just better.
Exactly. I think as a society, we're only as strong as our weakest links. Mm-hmm. And if we can help push up and bring up the most marginalized, disenfranchised members of our community, so that they feel that they're able to make a difference and they're able to affect change within their own lives, that just makes things so much better for everyone else.
I just want to say, you do a great job, and people in your field they're in there and they're battling people with all these different situations and stories and backgrounds. So it's good that there's people like you trying to make people better and make the city better and make the world better.
Thanks, dude. For sure. I really appreciate that.
Okay, man. So we'll head it off here and then we'll talk soon.
Okay, buddy.
Okay, cheers. We are at the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, tell a buddy, find me online, connect, ask a question, follow, subscribe. You can find me Frank Ienzi, Frankienzi, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube. I'm there. Check out my website for daily blogs, frankienzi.com. So remember, figure it out. That's what we do on the Figure It Out podcast.
Figure It Out podcast,
where we figure everything out from business, social media, marketing, and more. Because we are always living that marketing life.
Living that marketing life.
On this podcast, we fuel marketing through education, inspiration, and motivation.
Fuel marketing through education, inspiration, and motivation.